On today's podcast, we're talking about thinking of life and your career as a business owner instead of an employee and the major shift that that makes in your life and your career. Caleb, thoughts?
Yes, sir. So I really think of it in a couple of different ways. Obviously, when you're running a business, any owner would tell you that in order to succeed at business, you need a couple of things. You need some processes. Uh, I mean, you can have a solo business, but you need people, whether that's partners, employees, sometimes contractors. They don't always have to be the people that work with you. And that type of thinking, systems and people and processes, can apply not only to employees who aren't even running the business because they need to know the systems and processes, they need to get to know the people, but also to everyone in our personal lives. I think that not enough people think of their personal life in certain ways that business owners think, like opportunity cost and capital allocation and all that stuff, because they feel like it's their personal life, and so they don't want to mix personal and business. But really, if you think about it, and you have the processes in place and the right partners and the right people, your personal life can be a lot more successful. One thing that I think about a lot, especially when it comes to personal finance, is the whole, like, are you putting your money into things that will give you a good return? Sometimes I feel like people are wasting, a lot of times I feel like people are wasting a lot of money and they don't really think about, like, is this going to give me a good return in the long run? And then they don't have money later in life, and there's a reason for that. So, yeah, that's my initial thoughts. But what about you?
Yeah, I was trying to think of what were the things that differ critically in business thinking and personal life thinking that really set the two apart. And what I came up with, but I'd like to talk about systems more because I think that is critically important. And in my own life, I noticed that like processes and systems are hard to maintain. Um, but to me, I kept coming back to decision making was like a key aspect of running your life like a business, and that decisions will be probabilistic and not always clear that they're going to be the correct decision. And you're not hardly ever sure that it is the right decision. What was the Mark Twain quote, which is like, um, what gets people in trouble is not what they know, but what they think they know that is not so. Uh, and so you can be overconfident and still be wrong, and it's fatal. But I was listening to Tom Sosnoff, who was one of the co-creators of Thinkorswim, which was the trading platform that was purchased by Charles Schwab. And he was commenting about one of the big qualities that they saw in people who became very good traders. He started as a pit trader in the Chicago Board of Exchange, Options Exchange. It was, he said, quick decision making. And that being a business owner and being a trader assisted you in quickly making decisions. And that a decision must be made regardless of the outcome many times in life. And if you don't make the decision, it will be made for you.
I totally agree with that. I think that so many times people don't, they just let a decision be forced upon them. They don't take initiative, and then their life isn't as good as they want it to be. And they wonder why. But it's because they didn't take the initiative in the first place to make specific decisions along the way. Then they end up somewhere they don't want to be. Let's talk a little bit about the systems. So obviously, I use ChatGPT a lot because I run an AI company, and I also enjoy conversing with ChatGPT to push my ideas and make sure that, anyways, I'm rambling. So I talked with Chat a little bit about like building your life like a business, and I do think that systems are a really important part of that. One of some of the most important systems and processes, I think, are habits, routines, and then having rules to help you make decisions. And then there's a couple of really important inputs that go into those processes, which is, and I've heard people say this is like the T framework or something, but time, energy, and attention. Like, what are you doing with your time? Where are you expending your energy, and what has your attention? I think that the third one, well, the first and third one, time and attention, are so fractured, especially in our culture right now, because you can get on your phone in 1 second and be on TikTok or Instagram and just sit there for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours and not really do anything. And so instead of, like you said, taking initiative, making a certain decision, like I know for students especially, if they have an exam coming up, most of them will just get on their phone and they'll let whatever happens in the exam happen instead of taking the initiative, studying throughout the week or throughout the month before the exam so that they're ready. They just get on their phone and sit on TikTok for a while. And so that's like a breakdown of a process, right? Because they could probably get a better test score, but instead they're letting whatever decision be forced upon them when the exam comes. I think that that also relates to business as well. If you have a big project coming up and you are procrastinating because your time, energy, and attention are fractured, then it's not going to produce good results, and you're going to end up wherever you end up because you didn't take initiative.
I agree with that. And sometimes I wonder how much of that, I definitely, there are areas in which I do this for sure. The whole, like, I don't want to do it, and so I put it off, which then it becomes an even bigger, it's like when you ignore the problem, it becomes an even bigger problem. And then it just snowballs. Instead of eating the frog, as, I can't remember who coined that. But
David Allen, I think.
Was it David Allen?
Getting things
doing the hard thing first and then getting it out of the way. I absolutely understand that. It's not logical, but like, I get it. Where was I going with that? I have no idea where I was going with that.
That's okay.
But
I think,
yeah, putting things off or being ambivalent about them makes it into larger problems. But how do you, if you had to recommend to somebody ways of dealing with that, like just make a decision, what are keys to helping people with that? Because I struggle with that, like helping people make the first step.
slow down. I think that's the biggest one. I feel this all the time when people are like, "Oh, how are you doing?" And then someone answers, "I'm busy. Like, I'm just busy. I got a lot going on." And then they're watching Netflix 3 hours every night. I think slowing down is the biggest key to our entire culture's problem. And it feels like, oh, watching Netflix for however long is kind of slowing down, but it doesn't allow your brain to slow down. And so if you can just sit down for 10 minutes and write down a list of things that you have to do and then prioritize them, you're going to be so much further ahead than most people because no one is taking the time to do that. And I know this doesn't even seem to correlate, but slowing down and not thinking about anything for a while because our minds are constantly looking at something, seeing something, listening to something. Like, we're not letting our minds actually slow down and just be silent. And so I think if people were to, not like woo-woo meditation, but just, sitting down and meditating for a little bit, we would have more brain capacity to actually make decisions. And so we would actually do it. Whereas right now, as soon as I get bored, I get on my phone and play games or something, you know? That's what most people do. So I would say slowing down is the most important part. The second piece to that is your environment. So again, if you have super quick access to Netflix, you have tons of games on your phone, you have websites on your computer that you can just do random stuff like read articles or all that kind of stuff, I think that it doesn't allow you to slow down. So you need to set up your environment to allow for that, which will help you make better decisions. And that's something that I've done personally. I've like blocked ESPN and like YouTube and social media and all that stuff just so that I don't have that's not constantly available to me. And instead I'm forced to like do something that's either productive or slow down and not do anything and actually force myself to be bored for a little while, which seems counterintuitive because, you know, how does being bored help you move forward? But it's what gives you the brain capacity in order to make the important decisions. I feel like, at least in my life, that's what I've realized.
I think what Caleb just said, dear viewer, is turn this YouTube short off right now and just sit there and think.
Yep. Turn the YouTube short off, take 10 minutes, write down what you have to do and do it. Honestly, just turn off your phone.
I was going to say back to David Allen. A coworker gave me his book, Getting Things Done, for Christmas last year, and I've done a really terrible job of reading it. But now what I've been trying to do is get to work. Before I start my work, I'll read 1 or 2 pages, and I'll just write down the things that I think are like, oh, that's good. Oh, that's a good point. And if I remember, I'll post it in the description down below. But one of the frameworks, if you've never read the book or heard of David Allen, I would say his book is a good collection of different ways of getting things done. Like, it's just a book of ways to track tasks and attack tasks. And 5 out of 6 are not going to be relevant. But you might hit one that, or at least in my experience, like, oh, that's super helpful. And the one that I've instigated at work, but I would be curious to get your input on, is that it's a 3-category system, and I went ahead and put it on 1 sheet of paper. I could have put it on several, but I like having it on 1 sheet of paper sitting in front of me. And it has 3 sections. And the first section is next steps. The second section is waiting on, and the third section is projects. So every project that I'm working on should have an item in the next step category or the waiting on category. Either I'm waiting on somebody else and I put what I'm waiting on and the date, so that if it's been more than a week or more than a month or whatever my general idea of how long it should take has been, I will push it to the next steps, which is contact this person and remind them about it. But everything on that sheet in the bottom category has an actionable item in the top 2 categories. And that has really helped me keep track of things. And some things are a 2-minute task and I could just do it right now. Or if it's not critical, it'll go into the next steps category. But anyway, that has really helped me at work keep track of things that aren't my normal. Like, I do have tasks that I do every single week, just quick things that need to get knocked out. That's a whole separate thing. The problem is I have never been able to instigate that system in my personal life, because at work, I have a desk, and I always come back to that desk whenever I finish a meeting or a project or whatever. I come back to the desk and the paper's right there. So I've tried a couple of task tracking apps, and usually like works for a couple weeks, and then I stop looking at it. And also just the phone is distracting. I've tried keeping a piece of paper in my pocket, which I'm going to try again, because I keep coming back to it. I love having a pen and I love having the paper. But that is you doing things, or you're in your sports shorts or whatever, and you stop keeping a paper on you. So anyway, thoughts on practical ways to instigate systems that are mobile. If it has to be on my phone, I can try it again. But man,
Yeah. No, I totally feel that. I wish I could say that I was really good at it, um, in terms of having the tasks and like categorizing them correctly. I mean, I get my tasks done because I've set up my environment to do that, but categorizing them, like having the whole system is not, I'm not quite as good at that. So the basic thing that I've done is I will literally just take my notebook and write down my tasks and be like, okay, what are my top 10? And then I'll start trying to knock them off because I've tried to use Google Tasks. It does have all my tasks right now, but I just don't look at it enough because I not on my computer and phone enough. I think the biggest thing that has helped me, well, I do have a desk at my house, so I guess I would say like putting it on my desk because then I'm there and it is something that I go back to. But for people who don't necessarily work at home that much, honestly, I mean, most people are in the kitchen a lot. Like you could even put it on your fridge because you're gonna see it all the time. And if your wife makes fun of you or your husband is like, why is this here? You can be like, well, I'm trying to get things done and I want to make sure that I see this consistently so that I continue to work on these tasks. Just make it simple, don't make it some super long thing that covers the entire fridge. You could put it on the side too. I think the most practical application that I could say is wherever you spend the most time, find somewhere in that room or that space to put a piece of paper that you can write down your tasks on, and without making it like super awkward. Like don't put it in the bathroom or something, obviously. But whatever space you spend the most time in, put it somewhere that you're going to see it. One thing that I do is sometimes my wife will leave things and I'll be like, okay, we got to take this. We can't miss this because it has to go here or it has to go here. I will set it right in the walkway the day that we're supposed to take it so that she's like basically tripping over it every single time so that she picks it up because she'll get a little annoyed. Like, why is this here? I'm like, well, the point is so that you'll get annoyed so that we'll take it. And so if you kind of do the same thing, put it somewhere that you see it all the time, then you'll probably get more done, to be honest. That's what I at least have seen in my own life.
yep, that's fair. There were one other thing as an addendum to that I was just talking about with my wife this week is I have great flexibility at the job I have, which is great. And I was telling her I'm considering doing a flipped work day, like one day a week. Working at home sucks. I'm terrible at it. I'm too interested in fun things or just anything that's not working. And so working from home is terrible as much as I would love to do more of it. But instead, waking up in the morning on a day where I have an obligation in the morning, and that is because I'm lazy and will sleep in. But if I do it on a Wednesday when we do this podcast, it forces me to get up. And then staying home and doing at-home tasks, and then going to work and working late where all my coworkers are gone and there's no distractions. So instead, like flipping the workday and using my full brain capacity to get home stuff done. And then if it's on a weekly schedule, we'll see if that works.
No, that makes sense.
Honestly, but because like by the time I get home, I don't necessarily want to do more clerical work. It's just clerical work for me.
Yeah. I enjoyed when no one was there because it was nice, it was just me and I could get stuff done and there was no distractions. So yeah, that's interesting. I want to know how that goes once you implement that. I think a really good question that came up when I was conversing with ChatGPT on this whole subject was, if your life was a business, would you get more investors? Like, would people be willing to invest in it? And so the reason why I like that question is because in business, if you're doing things. I mean, obviously, discounting fraud. We talked about FTX. He was defrauding investors. But in general, if you're running things correctly, your operations efficient, you're growing, you're being productive, people are willing to invest in your company in order to continue growing. But if your business is not, and your business has holes in it, the operation is not going well, then people, they're not going to put their money into that. And so I like that question, because in your personal life, are you allocating things? Are you allocating money to the correct things? Are you allocating your energy to the correct things? Are you taking time for yourself to be re-energized in order to do more efficiently? And so just thinking about that is something to have in the back of your mind, because if you're trying to build your life in a way that's successful, where other people would be willing to invest in it, even relationally, people are willing to invest in your life, then I think you're going to be a bit more successful than if you don't have that mindset at all. What do you think?
Yes, and what I was thinking while you were talking about that, in my terms, now I also go to the extreme version of this, where I'll ignore small details that to other people are very important, but I'm like, I don't care. Which is, are you focusing on the leverage that you have? Are you doubling down on the right thing? And I think maybe one of the thoughts you had sent me was, are there things that you're putting resources into that you should just get rid of? And so you can better optimize on something else. Now, I do think there's something to be said for, do you enjoy, this is like the 4 quadrants thing from the buy back your time. Do you enjoy it, but it's not that profitable? You probably need to keep a little of that. That's like, your family. They may not make you money, but that's very rewarding. And if you have a skill, you should double down on that skill. Especially if it's a skill that you enjoy, you should probably not ignore it, because that may be an area of high leverage for you, especially if other people don't enjoy. One thing that I was talking with my boss about, we just did our employee reviews. I was like, I like to talk. I enjoy talking. I work at an accounting firm. This doesn't help you make money. But we are, I think I mentioned it before, planning on doing some small business presentations for helping small business owners, and it'll help get us some free advertising and our name out there. But also just talking. That's a strength that I have that the office does not necessarily share, and could be a point of leverage. But I think that I underutilize it currently as far as in the business setting. But yeah, in your personal life, like, what are you really good at? And what are you really bad at? I'm terrible at keeping track, like calling a vendor for a thing. Oh, I need to call this vendor. They haven't gotten back to me about my whatever plumbing. I need to just keep on them. Fortunately, I'm married and my wife is really good at those things.
Yeah.
So we trade skills. So I have a cheat code there.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think that learning is capital. Like, you can choose what you learn. And so learning how to use your skill better, whatever your skill may be, I think is super important. And everything has an opportunity cost, right? So if you're choosing to do this thing, that means you're choosing not to do this thing. And so saying yes to something is always saying no to some other thing, whether it's something you like or don't like. So I think it's important to make those decisions on what you're going to put your time and energy into, so that the things you are investing in, whether it's return on your own, like happiness, or an actual return in your life, I think it's important to prioritize those and make decisions.
Yeah. One critical addendum to that, I think, in my own life is I believe in our previous conversation, you mentioned what motivates you is control of the four: power, honor, control, pleasure. No, sorry, it's not power. Honor, control, money, and pleasure. That's the four. You can tell which two I ignore because I don't care about them. But I was telling somebody recently, having a conversation with a young guy, and we were talking about exercise and health and future, whatever. And I was saying, like, I'm a pleasure motivated person. And you were talking about maximizing happiness. And I have to take into account, I need to maximize my happiness now and in 20 years and 20 years after that and 20 years after that. So I need to optimize all those versions of myself over time with the things that I'm doing now. Because I could optimize my hedonic happiness and, I don't know, buy a boat. But that wouldn't, I have other goals that are to maximize my hedonic happiness later. And going back to if people would invest in your life, like if you were a fund manager or a business or whatever, the investors you want are the investors that are going to put in their money and never touch it. They're going to die with their money in your business and they're going to pass it on to their kids. Like that is the ideal investor because you don't have to worry about next quarter them taking their money out. So if you can sell to yourself now, sell pleasure to yourself now, sell pleasure to yourself later, and sell that to an investor, and they see the long-term perspective, then that's like the optimal space to be in. You've optimized your honor, your control, your money, your happiness throughout time.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's a great addition because that's something that lots of people right now do not think about. Everyone is so focused on what can I do to make me happy in this moment that they're not always willing to do the hard thing now in order to, like, for example, working out. Like you just said, your working out may not be the most pleasurable thing in the moment because I know you don't necessarily enjoy it that much.
I hate it.
But you know that later on down the road, you won't have the bad knees, you won't have the bad back if you continue, and life will actually just be better in general later in life, and you'll have a higher quality of life, and your health span, not just your lifespan, will be longer. And so it's worth it in the moment to do the workout, even though it's not the most fun. And when you spend money, I think this is especially tough with young professionals because in school you don't get taught really how to do personal finance, how to invest, all that. And so most people are optimizing for what can I spend money on right now that will make me the most happy, which in reality it doesn't anyways, but like buying the new cars, buying a new house, going out to eat every day, buying the Louis Vuitton bag, and then they're not investing. And then later in life, they wonder why they don't have enough money to retire or to actually do what they want to do instead of being stuck in the 9 to 5 they have to work in. And it's because they optimized for only current happiness and they weren't thinking long-term at all. So I love that addition because I try to think long-term as much as possible, which sometimes can end up being a problem, but that's the balance, right? Like you need to make sure that you're balancing the long-term and short-term, and no one's perfect, but we got to keep trying to balance that. That is the podcast. Please like and subscribe on YouTube and send us an email, jc.unscripted@gmail.com. Give us some content ideas. We want to make what you guys want to watch. So